So we started chapter 2 in this psychology book last time, and I think we finished up talking about Piaget's schema, or schemes, they call it in your textbook. These outlines, diagrams, abstract representations of stuff, processes, whatever's going on. And then Piaget says we assimilate new information, and then we accommodate our existing framework, our existing schema to take in the new information, or we actually create a whole new file in our little mind computer thing to make this stuff work. And today we're going to talk about disequilibrium. A situation that cannot be fully handled by an existing schema. What would that be? Okay, let's think of the pictures, the diagrams you have for homes that people live in. You have a picture of a house? So, what's your picture look like?
Looks like my house.
Looks like the house where you live. And could you describe that for the rest of the class?
Like the exterior design? Is that?
Sure. If we pulled up the driveway, what would we see?
You'd see a double wide trailer house that's like really long and has an addition built on to it.
A double wide trailer house that's really long with an addition built on. Did all of you take your little schema and modify it a little bit? Just like that. You just adjusted your schema. Now, see, if she would have said a double wide trailer house, I would have said, I have a schema for that, but I would have that in a separate schema than my schema for house. Why would I do that? I don't know. Because if you've been in a double wide trailer house, it's just as cool as a regular house that's built from scratch with sticks, putting it up. Oh, that's another thing. Think of a house built with sticks. Now, see, a carpenter, when I say that, he would be thinking of 2x4s that come from the lumber yard. No, I'm talking about just sticks.
Like a hut.
A what?
Like a hut.
Hut. No, that's what the quarterback says when he wants you to. See, I threw somebody off. See, disequilibrium. Whenever you laugh, that means when your students laugh, that means that you've thrown them off balance. And so what we do, they throw us off balance and we go ha 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 to regain our equilibrium. Isn't that cool?
I'm really self-conscious about when I laugh in class now.
That's okay, but see, that's right. That's right. You throw, but it's just like, okay, hut. She said hut, and we're thinking about dwelling places, and I'm going, no, that's what the quarterback says on Sunday. And these guys didn't laugh because they were probably watching the quarterback go hut, hut, hut on Sunday. And somebody going, that's so strange. That's so weird. There's something wrong with the way he thinks. Well, you know that street runs both ways. You know what that means, don't you? There's something wrong with the way she thinks. And what, somebody wrote a book about that? Men are from
Mars.
And women are from
Venus.
What in the world does that mean? Mars and Venus. Mars and Venus. Does anyone know why he picked Mars and Venus to make that comparison between the difference between the way men and women scheme, the way they picture things, they think things through?
I know there's a similar book, I don't remember who wrote it, but it's men are like waffles and women are like spaghetti. And it talks about just the processes.
Now, I like that one.
Yeah.
Because I like waffles and spaghetti is just plain messy.
Because waffles are very orderly and organized. and spaghetti is all over the place, which is also the tendencies for women
So
to
that,
think more.
and that's another thing too. When you make these generalizations, you say, well, that's most women are like that, most men are like that, but there are exceptions.
Yes, for sure.
And sometimes we're mixtures of both.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, okay, so let's see if I threw you off balance with hut. Now we said a house with sticks. Can you think of just picking up the old dead sticks that fall off a tree and building a house with it? What are you thinking? What are you thinking? You're thinking that the big bad wolf could blow it down in a heartbeat. That's why you want to build your house out of bricks. I'm thinking, no, I would rather have the breeze coming through the wall. Now, see, I messed with somebody again. I threw them off balance. Why would I want the breeze coming through the wall of my house?
I have no idea.
Okay, you haven't been to Brazil yet.
Oh.
Wait till you lay down in your bed and go to sleep at night. You go to sleep in Brazil and you look up and here's the wall and there's this much space between the wall and the ceiling.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's detached. Got it.
What is that all about? And I would lay down, I'd go to sleep, I'd say, Lord, I know the critters have to eat, but please don't let them eat on my face or inject me with poisons while I'm sleeping tonight. Because you can't keep them out with that space there. Why do those Brazilians build a house with this big old airspace at the
Natural
top?
ventilation.
Who wants ventilation?
I can't sleep when it's hot. I mean, I reckon they can't
They
either.
probably don't have the same like AC and stuff that we do.
The climate is such that, in fact, I was introduced to sleeping in a hammock. Have you ever slept in a hammock?
Mm-mm.
Say it hurts your back? That's because no one taught you the correct way to sleep in a hammock. That you actually don't lay like that, you lay a little sideways until you get just the right incline to make yourself feel comfortable. But you see, the kind of mattresses we have in Brazil, they would get moldy real fast from the humidity.
Mm-hmm.
Because they have 2 seasons, dry and wet, and when it's wet, it's just wet everywhere. So they have that for ventilation, for circulating the air through the house. Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. So see, and once we start making sense, we do some accommodation here. But when the kids are laughing, don't think they're laughing at you. You just threw them off balance, and you say, so what are we thinking here? What's going on? And then kind of help them regain their equilibrium to come back to where they are. I had a couple of words here that just in case what we're talking about didn't make you laugh or throw you off balance, that I could throw you off balance on purpose. Trunk. Okay, now, do you have a picture in your mind of a trunk?
Mm-hmm.
So
Which
what?
one?
Yeah.
Which trunk is it? So you say, I have a whole bunch of pictures just a whole bunch of pictures of trunks. Which trunk are you talking about?
There's a tree trunk. There's an elephant
tree trunk?
There's a
Or the
car trunk.
elephant trunk? Or the car
It's
trunk?
like a chest trunk.
The what?
Like a chest.
The chest trunk? Is that it? Any more trunks floating around out there?
Probably.
Like swim trunks,
Oh, yeah.
Ooh,
like
there
shorts,
you go.
swim trunks. Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
Oh man, some people, where are they from? Mars?
I didn't even think about that. That was
Beautiful. I like that. Write that one down. Swim trunk. There you go. I like that one. But see it throws you off. You say, okay, now I can accommodate that. I can include that one in my mix with that.
That's a good one.
What about boot?
Are you talking about a noun or a verb?
I don't care.
All of them.
All of them.
Yeah.
I mean,
So which came to your mind, a noun or a verb? When I
mean,
said boot,
I kind of thought of both. I thought of a cowboy boot, and then I also thought of like rebooting a system.
a cowboy boot, reboot a system. What are you laughing
She
at?
just laughs at me all the time.
I pictured someone wearing a cowboy
kicking, like they're booting.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I got both boots. I got a cowboy boot giving somebody the boot.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. And can you see how fun it is to kind of mess with our heads a little bit? But do you understand? Little children, now with adults this is fun to do this because then we can start having some fun and playing with it. You start doing it with little children and you'll see them. It's like,
Yeah. You messed up their whole life.
that's just wrong, teacher. That's just wrong. It's because it's like they just can't jump around and make those adjustments like we can. They have to have some, I call it some time for it to sink in. And when they say, no way, you couldn't live in a house with the wind blowing through it like that. And they would say, that's ridiculous. And you realize, as you listen to them talk, that what you're describing just doesn't fit their way of thinking. I mean, in early America, have you ever been out to old Missouri town? Have you been any place in your home state where they built what people used to live in back in the 1800s?
Well, they got like in Arizona, they got the mud houses, like the adobes and stuff.
A mud house. How would you like to live in a house made out of mud? It's like, what is that? Actually, it's kind of like a brick house.
Mm-hmm. It's like clay.
It's going, what? No. Well, what do you think bricks are made of? Bricks, that's what they're made of. It's made of brick material. What are bricks made of?
Pitch and tar and
Clay, isn't it?
yeah.
And out in Arizona, the mud, what, they mix grass or stuff with it to hold it together, and they make these mud bricks, and then they stack them up. And you say, well, won't it rain on them and melt them? And why is that not a problem?
They like coat it with something too.
They coat it with something, and it doesn't rain that much anyway.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, but see, that's right. That's the rain's not the problem. That's right. But here's this. So what did people in Arizona? They did mud houses. In Kansas, they made. No one's here from Kansas.
Brick.
What?
Brick. Or rock.
Stone houses. Right. I was in a home. Have you ever been in a home where someone had an old 1800 stone house where they just, which I thought was pretty ingenious, all the stones that were spread all over the land where they picked them up so they could raise crops, they just started stacking them up and said, whoa, look what we have here. You just keep stacking that stone up and pretty soon you've got a house made out of stone. What about out there where there was no stone? It was just grassland. Anyone ever see a sod house?
Yeah.
They just cut chunks out of the sod
Yep.
and stacked it on top of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So what did the Native Americans do?
Teepees.
They had a house that was
Yeah, animal skin.
looked like an upside down paper cup,
Mm-hmm.
little cone.
Mm-hmm.
What is that all about? Well, they were always moving around because, okay, what did they call those things?
Teepees.
Why do they call them a teepee?
I don't remember.
I don't know either. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? So, what were they made of?
Animal skin.
Animal skins. Any particular kind of animal? Rabbits?
Buffalo, generally.
Take a lot of rabbits to make enough to sew together. But you get a few buffalo, skin them out, cure the hides. Whoa, you can wrap those around those wooden poles. And what were the wooden poles for? For tying to the side of your horse and hauling all your stuff from one campground to the next and dragging it behind your horse. It was so ingenious. And the early Americans called them savages. What's that all about? Does anyone know why the Native Americans were labeled savages by European immigrants?
Because to them they seemed uncivilized.
Because they didn't build a home and plant a garden and put a fence up and raise animals? And I'm thinking Native American would look at that and say, that's uncivilized. You're disrupting nature to live that way. We just kind of follow the buffalo and harvest what we need and get our meat and then pick berries that grow wild, and we got it all taken care of. And some places they would have a village, and if they were there long enough, they would plant a garden and that kind of thing. But they would primarily follow the buffalo to get the hides and the meat, and then what trees they found, they would take them to make the poles that they would use to build their tent that would also haul their stuff around. In fact, I said one time, if early Americans said that the Native Americans were savages because they were nomadic, then what does that make our spiritual ancestor in the Bible, in the Old Testament? The nomadic people would be called savages? Now, nomadic people in the Middle East didn't live in tents. Yeah, they did, didn't they? Oh, that's what they were called. They were called tents there. We call them teepees for Native Americans, but it's really a tent, just a different kind. Their tents were just made a little differently. But they were still, I think, made out of skins, weren't they? And seemed to have like a flat roof or something.
For what?
The tents that the Middle Easterners built, they didn't have a peak on them like those poles coming
They're
together.
more like wigwams, kind of.
It's like, what's that all about? Well, again, they don't get the same rain over there. They don't have the problem with rain that you would have in the Great Plains region, where you better have something to shed the water or you could be in trouble.
Fun fact, the TP is derived from a Lakota word, which means they dwell.
Oh,
So it
it's
traces
an
back
old
to the
Lakota word.
Yeah.
How cool is that? All right. So anyway, we've taken care of disequilibrium and regaining our equilibration, the process of restoring balance and gaining understanding. Piaget's stages. Birth to two, he calls sensory motor. This is on page 31, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, page 31.
Or
26.
27 has a chart.
27 has a chart. Good. Yeah. Okay. So birth to two. See, if you're going to be a teacher, you're probably not going to be messing too much with the 2-year-olds. But from 2 to 7, and from 7 to 11, and the 2 to 7 sensory motor, what? They're just sensing things and practicing using their motor skills. 2 to 7 is called pre-operational. Any idea why Piaget called them pre-operational? From 2 to 7? When would you have a kid in school from 2 to 7? In preschool?
Through second, third
Through
grade.
second grade? Why would they be called pre-operational? Okay, do you know anything about operations? Oh, there's another word. Let's draw pictures in our minds for the process called operation. What picture comes to mind?
Like a surgical operation.
That's with me. That's the first one that pops in my head is a surgical operation.
I actually thought of order of operations.
The order of
That's what I
operations.
thought.
We got a math person in here.
I thought of the game operation.
Yeah, me too.
What?
I thought of the game operation where you had to take the little
Oh, the little game.
pieces out,
Where is that
yeah.
the one where it's like built on the medical
yeah, it's
profession?
Kind of like secure, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little
like
game you play called Operation.
surgery.
And she's talking about the order of operations. She's talking about mathematics, isn't she? What is the order of operations?
Oh boy.
Whether you multiply, divide, subtract, add, what order you do everything in.
When you have multiple variables in a sequence.
Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally.
Parentheses. exponents.
You didn't learn that anywhere?
I didn't learn that.
I was homeschooled.
I just learned that. What's your excuse for everything?
For everything.
I love it.
But P is parentheses, E is exponents,
Multiplication,
Multiplication
division, subtraction.
and division,
Yeah.
and then addition and subtraction,
Yeah.
in that order. So, any other words for operations?
I mean, there's the business position. There's a business position. What's it called?
Operational manager.
Chief financial
Manager of operations.
I
operations
think like how a process is done and how it's everything.
manages how we're doing things here.
I'm not business
What's
manager.
Operation Christmas Child?
Shoebox gift.
Yeah.
That's where we put stuff in a shoebox. Why a shoebox? They're not I mean, don't they make special boxes now for
Yeah.
Operation Christmas Child?
Mm-hmm.
Why did they start out using shoeboxes?
They probably figured everyone had shoebox. I don't know.
I mean, because shoeboxes are just the right size, and everybody has some laying around. No, you don't. Well, if you don't have them, where will you get them? Go to the nearest shoe store and say, "Do you have any shoe boxes?" They throw them away all the time. Take as many as you want, and fill them up with presents. So, you're working with pre-operational children. They just don't get it. And guess what they say to you? I don't get it. And so you try harder, and they say, I still don't get it. And so finally you say, don't worry about it. They go, what? I said, don't worry about it. If you don't get it this year,
Mm-hmm.
next year when you see it again, you'll get it.
Understand, yeah. Okay.
And doesn't that help some kids realize what? You say, because see, he makes this, it's not exactly like he says. It isn't like 0 to 2 and then 2 to 7.
Right.
But you see, if a person's pre-operational in their thinking, if they just don't get it, say, don't worry about it. It'll come to you eventually. The longer you live, the more you learn, the more you develop your thinking abilities, you'll start to figure this stuff out. To where eventually, what's the 7 to 11 called? In that chart on page 27?
Concrete operation.
Concrete. What
Start-
word comes to mind when you hear concrete?
A mixer.
A cement mixer?
Yeah.
Solid
Dry
or
work.
firm.
What?
Solid or firm.
Solid or firm?
Driveway.
Driveway?
Ice cream.
Ah, I'm glad you said that. That was thinking, I go by a Dairy Queen every day on my way home, and I think about concrete. And the first time I saw Dairy Queen advertising the concrete, I go, what in the world is this? That's just dumb. Then I tasted one, and I said, I wonder if real concrete tastes like this. No, you don't wonder stuff like that. You know it wouldn't. Don't eat it. Well, why do they call it why does Dairy Queen call it a concrete?
Because it doesn't fall out of the cup. I think.
Is that what it is?
I don't know. I was just guessing. Actually, Dairy Queen
mix
is
it
Blizzard.
like a concrete mixer.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
They have a little mixer like a concrete
I-
mixer
Well, it's like
I was
back
just
doing
guessing.
it.
that mixes it all together.
Crazy.
I know.
So, here's the magic concept for teachers 7 to 11. Give them something concrete. When you're talking about, see, we've been talking about houses. When you're talking about a sod house, the best thing you can do is go out in your yard and cut up some grass and make a tiny little sod house.
Mm-hmm.
And go, there's a miniature sod house. And then a rock house, here's a miniature rock house. Go get a bunch of gravel somewhere and stack it up. How are you going to stack up gravel?
Glue.
Yeah, you just take some Elmer's glue and glue it together. In fact, you could probably lay it flat and lay it and put glue all over it and then stack it up and make a wall out of it. And then get some sticks that would form a little tripod
Mm-hmm.
and then wrap some skin around it. Go trap a rabbit and skin it out and cure the hide.
There you go.
Well, you might want to go online at one of those nature places. If you haven't found it yet, there's a cool place that sells nature stuff. And you can buy little rabbit hides and other little things, or just go someplace, go to a thrift store and find something made out of leather and buy it and then wrap it around to put it around your little, or do you have anything made out of leather?
Saddles.
Leather jacket
Saddles.
or leather boots or something that you could show that they take that leather stuff and make something out. And it's the same with okay, we're talking about houses, that would be social studies. When it comes to math, just have concrete materials. When little kids are when I say add 3 and 4 and you get 7, I don't know if you understand what that looks like, but just picture in your mind the symbol 3, and then picture in your mind plus the symbol 4, and then picture in your mind equals 7. Somehow taking that little squirrely symbol called 3 and that little 1, 2, 3 mark thing called 4 and putting those together, and you come up with 2 marks. You understand where that just kind of boggles their minds a little bit?
It's definitely not like the way that I think. Like when for simple addition, I a lot of times will think of here are 3 things, like whether it's I have 3 apples and then I also add 4 apples. How many are there? I mean, I don't necessarily think of the number.
That's
Does that
right.
make sense?
That's right. And that's what little kids, and you were taught to think like that.
Yeah.
And little kids need to be helped to think that way through. And that's why they already, since they don't have apples with them,
Yeah.
they're using
They
their
use
fingers.
Yeah.
And okay, did any of you ever go, let's see, 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, that would be 7. Did any of you ever do that and then have a teacher scold you for counting on your fingers?
Once I got 4.
You did? Okay, here's what I'm telling you. If you can remember that teacher's name, send them an email and say, shame on you. There is not anything wrong with me counting on my fingers. It's concrete stuff. By the way, you want to see a little finger fun with math just for cool? Okay, what's 1?
You're gonna do the 9s, aren't you?
I
Oh,
taught the yes.
You know those?
Yes.
Let's see.
It's my
I think
favorite.
what's 4 times
9.
9?
45.
4 and 5. What's 3 times 9?
27.
Oh, 3. That one. What's 3 times 9?
27.
27. Is that cool?
Did you know that, Seth? Have you heard
Yeah,
of
I've seen that before. I don't
What's
get messed
2
up on
times
that.
9?
that? 18.
The 1 and the 8 on the other side.
Have you heard of that, Matt?
No,
Really?
never.
Isn't
How
that?
did you get through school?
They literally walked up to the whiteboard and were just like, "What's 2 times 9?"
Yeah. That's,
That's crazy. That's how I learned multiples of 9.
Mm-mm.
Huh.
So it's the
That's
one
interesting.
number lower, and they always add the 9.
Interesting.
now she's got an algorithm going for her over there that works for her.
It's the worst math ever.
I love math.
But get concrete stuff. And here's what if you okay, when you take how to teach math as a course, it could be the teacher won't bring a lot of concrete stuff to class
Yeah.
because it takes up so much space. When I taught that class years ago, I actually had a room almost the size of one of these offices that was full of stuff that I could carry into the classroom to show people how to use it. And that's why a lot of teachers don't have it. They don't have the room to store that stuff. So they end up trying to get kids to think abstractly. And which age group is that? Abstraction. After 7 to 11 is concrete operations, and 11 to adult is formal operations. That's where the abstraction takes place. So you have to say, those kids need me giving them stuff, having things in there to work with. And one of my greatest tools, if you're limited for tools, one of my greatest tools is go to the craft store and buy a bunch of those popsicle sticks.
Mm-hmm.
those craft sticks, and then you can use those to teach all kinds of things in math. And when it comes to teaching fractions,
I love fractions. I hate decimals, but I love
just go to the teacher store and buy one of those kits with all those little pies in it, where you can hold up a slice of the blue pie and a slice of the red pie, and the kids can see the difference between 1/4 and 1/3. Because if you see 1/4 and 1/3 and you just are asked to think which one is larger, what's the little kid going to say? Think like a little kid for a minute. What's the little kid going to say? Which is larger, 1/4 or 1/3?
1/4.
Because it's got the larger number.
Yeah.
And he was always taught the larger number goes with the larger amount. But when you come to fractions, it messes with their head. So what do you hear from little kids all the time? I hate fractions. And understand and see what's going on is it's because of here's what's going on in their head. These theories about how we think help us understand what's going on in a little kid's head. And by the way, a person who loves math, that's me. I hate grammar.
See, I like grammar too.
Now, you know why I hate grammar? Because they have a rule, and then for every rule they have,
An exception.
if there's an exception, then it's no rule, people. Give me a break. So 3 plus 4 is 7, except when 3 plus 4 is 8. No, 3 plus 4 is never 8. Well, in grammar, there are exceptions to the rules. Then it's not a good rule. And see,
yeah.
that's the hyper math thinker reacting to what you're doing in grammar class.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of want to get inside these kids' heads to see what's going on. Can't you be a little creative with math? Yes, you can, but you'll get the wrong answer. And you can be a little creative with
No
grammar.
fun. You can't be creative.
What?
I said that's why it's no fun. You can't be creative.
There you go. So let's find some creative ways to do something. Let's think of something we can do creative in mathematics. And even in grammar and other places, create some of our own rules for how we do things. Okay, and then so the idea with that, get concretes, show them real stuff. And some of the kids, what are the different styles of learning? Have you taken a class on styles of learning?
Kinetic, auditory.
Yeah, so the people who are auditory, they need to hear things. The people who are visual, they need to what? See things. The people who are tactile, they need to
Feel.
touch things. You need to have something for them to touch. In other words, I could sit up here with, like addition, I could put 3 blocks up here and 4 blocks up here and say 3 plus 4 is, put them together and count them out, and you could say 7.
Mm-hmm.
And if I were teaching that to you and I looked at your faces and I said, everybody get that? And if you're a bunch of little kids and everybody got it except one person, I'd say, okay, for those of you who are still trying to figure this out, let's do it again. And then I could actually call Johnny up here to touch the blocks and put 3 here and 4 here and then put them together. Or I could give the blocks to him personally where he gets to touch them and put them together. And everybody else watches him doing it, and the visual people get it, and the guy who's touching it walks through it and he goes, I get it, because you're connecting with how he figures that stuff out. But for all those people, you're using concrete stuff. And whenever I'm teaching this formal operation stuff, when I'm teaching the formal stuff and somebody says, I just don't get it, then I go back to where can I find some concrete way to illustrate that. Okay. Some children can be taught before they reach a certain stage. The people who criticize Piaget and have revised some of his ideas. And conservation varies with the content as to how much they conserve from changing the way something looks. And experience and direct teaching affect the pace of learning. What does that mean? If I have a lot of material to cover, what am I going to be tempted to do as a teacher?
Rush through it in regard.
Just rush through it with direct teaching. If I want them to get a good handle on what we're doing, I'm going to have to slow down the pace and let them have some experience with it. And when I do that, just like I take the time today, wow, how can that be? See, I took the time today to talk about these concepts and illustrate them and mess with them a little bit, and bingo, just like that, we've used up 30 minutes of class. So now we have to keep moving in a hurry. So let's look at page 33 and talk about Vygotsky. And in my mind, this isn't a class on learning about all these theories. This is called educational psychology. So it's looking at these theories and saying, what from this theory can I use to become a more effective teacher? And Vygotsky's point is that each culture outfits each of its members, this is from page 34, with a cultural tool. And it passes that cultural tool, it uses that cultural tool to pass on knowledge, skills, experiences. So what cultural tool are you packing around, or tools? So what do you mean? So if I want to know something that I don't know, what do I do to find the information? What do we all do?
Use Google.
We Google it, isn't that right? We all have learned that? In my sophomore level class on general psychology, I look at the sea of faces and I make a statement like that. If you want to know something about anything, it's in a chapter on problem solving, and I say, you know, you want to solve a problem? You just Google your problem. Everybody goes, yeah. So then I pass out little pieces of paper, little squares, and I say, write a problem on this paper that you would like to know something about, and give it to me, and I'll find an answer. And so, you know what students do? They make up strange stuff. Because it's called, what's the game called? Stump the teacher? So they make up strange stuff and put it on there to stump the teacher. Guess what this teacher does? He goes to Google and he types in every one of these problems that have been given to him. He comes back to class with a Google answer to every problem. Every one of them. And the reason I do that is I discovered years ago that your generation knows all about Google, but they don't often use it when they're faced with a problem. Now, probably you're at the place now where that's not true of you, but I find that people who are first coming to college, that they look at me and they go, and you can see it when I take some class time, and it does take time, but when I take time to run through all those things in that general psychology class, it's like, oh. I mean, one time, I think the most bizarre thing you want to put on was, how do you buy a horse? And I Googled how to buy a horse, and I really thought I was going to get stumped, and it gave me a whole bunch of stuff on what you look at to buy a horse.
Yep.
And it's like, wow, you can find anything on there. So basically, you have to say, what is our culture giving us? And then you have to teach the kids how to use that tool in their culture. Don't just assume they know how to use the tool. Teach them how to use the tool. And what are, besides the internet and Google, do you have any other tools?
Experienced people. I like to ask questions. I'm a questioner. So like if I have an issue that I just want perspective or opinion on, I go and talk to people that I know.
I go find somebody who I think might have some expertise, and if they don't know, if I ask you, so do you know anything about this, and you say no, then what do you probably do? You say, so do you know anybody who might know something about it? And then you go to them, and you just keep going to people till you find someone who's got an answer. Now, is there anybody here that when you hear that approach to solving a problem go, I don't think that'd work? Or, I never heard of doing that before. All that says is your culture didn't give you that tool. That's all it's saying. It's a tool that your culture hasn't given you yet. And it wouldn't hurt to do this sometime in terms of preparation for teaching. Say, what are some of the tools that our culture gives us to solve problems? I mean, so often we tell little kids, you need to learn how to solve this problem.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't even know if they have the tools
to solve it.
to solve the problem. And it could be we need to be figuring out what are some of the tools their culture has given them. Let's help them learn how to use these tools to solve problems. And then what are some tools that they don't have? I mean, I grew up on a farm with a very intelligent father. He was a college graduate. And I still remember, he said, well, it's time to put new brake pads on new brake shoes. Oh, there's one, shoes. It's time to put new brake shoes on the car. And we would go out and take the wheel off the car, and then we would pull the drum off the wheel. Is anyone seeing the same drum I'm seeing? That big metal round thing that pulls off the wheel. We would pull that off, and here would be these two, what?
Things.
Shoes. Metal things tied together with a whole bunch of springs and little things holding them apart that when you push on the brakes it pushes them apart and makes these little shoes rub up against the drum and stop the car.
Mm-hmm.
Now, see, if you're drawing a complete blank, just Google a diagram of a brake drum on a car and how it works, or brakes on a car and drum brakes and how they work. And then you'll see a picture of what I'm talking about. And when after I got out of college, in fact, when I went back to get my master's degree, I was working at a Christian school, so I didn't make much money. So I had to go earn some money to pay for my master's degree, so I got a job working at a gas station because I could work late at night and it fit into my schedule. And the guy thought it was so funny to have a college graduate working for him that he said, come out here, son, I'm going to teach you a thing or two.
Aww.
And he took me out in the place, the work bay. Bay, what picture comes to mind when you see a bay? He took me out in the work bay, and then he said, I'm going to show you how to work on cars. And one of the first things he showed me was how to change brakes. And he put the car up on the lift, pulls it off so it's nice and easy to get to. And then he grabs this tool. And I said, what is that? He said, that's a brake tool. Have any of you seen a brake tool? Okay, I bet what happens if you Google brake tool? If you there's a picture of a brake tool, put picture of a brake tool. B-R-A-K-E, not B-R-E-A-K. B-R-A-K-E tool. Does the picture pop up? Is it like a long rod kind of thing?
Yeah, it's like a rod and it has one end that looks like it can hook into something and one end to turn.
Okay, describe it to him again.
This thing?
There's a lot.
No.
No.
But
There's
a lot.
so many.
go ahead,
And
you've
it
got
looks
it.
like one
Like this?
end can hook onto something and the other end is used to turn.
Oh, the clamp and then the.
Yeah, the one end it's like a big long rod, isn't it? It's just like a big long metal rod with one end where it looks like it hooks onto something. Got a little indentation in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then another end and it's like, and guess what? That tool is made to pop the springs off and then to put them back on. And the guy takes that tool, and unless you saw somebody use it, you wouldn't know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And he took that tool and he popped the springs off. And I started laughing. He goes, what's so funny? I said, my dad used to skin his knuckles and springs would fly everywhere because all he used was a screwdriver and a pair of pliers.
Yep. The old fashioned
And I
way.
said, And my dad was a college graduate, and he didn't. And I said, and he wasn't as smart as you are. And the guy just loved it. And he taught me how to use a brake tool. And I wanted so bad to take one to Oklahoma and give it to my dad for his birthday, but by then he was older and he just would have been, felt bad and like I was insulting him, so I just didn't do it. But I got one of those to use for my own brakes. And it's just like, okay, so he just equipped me with a tool. My culture didn't give me that tool. But this guy who was an auto repairman gave me that tool and told me how to use it. And all of a sudden I have a new tool to put in my box of tools. So think about your culture and the tools they've given you for acquiring knowledge. Oh, when I was a kid, you know, don't you? When I was a kid, we did not have the internet. But it didn't matter. We had a huge, big, it was like an encyclopedia. We had the Encyclopedia Britannica at our house, even though we were poor farmers. But we also had something that we'd inherited from my grandparents called the Books of Knowledge. And they were these cool encyclopedic like books that told you how to do all kinds of things. It was just amazing. So one of the tools that my culture gave me was you go find a book and read a book on how to do something. In fact, my parents gave me that, the culture I came from. So when my wife and I have a dilemma we're faced with, like we have children, and I said, I'm going to the library. She said, what for? I said, I'm going to do some research. Because not only did I learn to read books, then I said, go to the place where they have lots of books and go to the library and how to find stuff in the library. And even knowing how to find something in the library, that's one of the tools that your culture gives you. You don't have to worry about that because you can just Google it now. But sometimes you say, I'll go to the library and find that. And that's another valuable tool. I'll ask people who have some expertise. Or I'll just learn from my own experience. And by the way, have you ever tried to learn something from your own experience and you broke it?
The experience or the thing you were trying to learn?
And here's the way I see it. I could either pay tuition and have someone teach me how to fix something, or I could break one and then have to buy another one and pay tuition in the school of hard knocks. Hey, you still have to pay something to learn something. That's just the way life is. So the book says on page 34 that Vygotsky gave us this, brought out this, all the things that our culture outfits us with for passing on knowledge and skills and experiences. But I thought, is that all our culture does? Is equips us or outfits us with tools for passing on knowledge, skills, and experience? Do we also have tools or mechanisms for passing on attitudes and values and feelings?
Yeah.
Let's see. So what kind of tool did I inherit from my culture when it comes to this feeling stuff?
Rub some dirt on it. You'll be alright.
What?
Rub some dirt on it. You'll be alright.
There you go. Rub some dirt on it. You'll be all right. Shake it off.
Yo.
I watched my grandson play baseball. A guy gets hit by a pitch. Thump. And I hear all these parents, don't rub it, don't rub it. What does that mean? If something hurts, don't you rub it?
Yeah.
Why do they tell these baseball players not to rub it?
I don't know. I don't believe
See, I don't ask.
Right, you
I
should
just
know.
sit there and keep taking pictures of my grandson playing sports, but I don't understand all the jargon that goes on out there. I just go watch the game. Were any of you taught someplace in your culture that men don't cry? They lied to us, didn't they?
High school football.
Men don't cry.
No pain, no gain, no nothing.
Yeah.
Get
And
back
it's-
out.
And it's like, wait a minute. God gave me feelings, and every now and then I feel like crying. So then I'm thinking, somebody lied to me. Somebody back in my culture lied to me. And no pain, no gain. Is there ever gain without pain? Yes. But does some gain involve pain? Yes. But don't overstate the case. It's like, yeah, well, you're going to have to endure some pain to gain this. And guess what I said to the football coach? I'm out of here. This is more pain than it's worth. But I was too embarrassed to go home and tell my father I quit the football team. So when I walked off the football field, because they were beating us up out there. Freshmen come out there, it's like, what? This is time for the upperclassmen to turn them into hamburger. And I was smart enough to see that coming, and I said, you can turn the other guys into hamburger. I'm smarter than this. And when the coach said, where are you going? We're not finished yet. And I said, I'm finished. And then I uttered the worst words I could ever say. I said, this is stupid. Expressed my frustration, walked off the football field, and the football coach was the history teacher at our high school.
Oh no.
And did he ever forget that I said that?
Matt, it's your future.
Never. Guess what I learned from my high school culture? Don't say stupid to the football coach. That's where I think if you haven't heard me say any places, like sometimes when you feel like saying something, I say just swallow it. Just swallow it. Because my culture equipped me, my high school said, just don't say it. Just don't say it. And I went and got a job working at the gas station so I could stay after school and work for the guy at the gas station. Then I'd go home afterwards, and finally I got up the courage to say, Dad, I quit the football team, but I got a job at the gas station, so I'm making money. He wasn't impressed because he played football, and he just thought that was so cool to play football. And my older brother played football, and that was part of the problem. My older brother played football, but he was just mean about it. So when I went out, everybody wanted to get even with my older brother, took it out on me. I said, hey, you guys gang up on him someday in the dark, but what do I have to do with it? But I caught all the grief from the people that my older brother had run over, and my poor little brother came along, and he just toughed it out. I said to him one time, why did you stay out there? And here's what he said, because I saw the way Dad treated you when you quit, so I thought, I'm not going to quit. I thought, I don't recall Dad being mean to me when I quit. And he just laughed. Do we sometimes forget painful experiences because we don't want to remember them?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, no, I would remember that if my dad, because my dad, I liked him and he liked me. I don't ever recall that affecting our relationship. I'm thinking it must have if my little brother remembers it, and I've just forgotten it. And that's the scary thing, to think that some things in my life I can just forget. On the other hand, it's kind of neat that God's given us that mechanism to forget painful stuff, so it doesn't come back and mess with us over and over again.
Yeah.
So has my culture taught me to just forget some things, to just swallow some things, to just let some things go, to live and let live. Do you have any little axioms you float around with? Any tools you carry around? Live and let live. Anybody, you got this one, MYOB?
Make your own.
You don't know. Oh, bring your own booze? That's BYOB, isn't it?
Yes.
Bring your own booze? MYOB. Oh, you weren't equipped with that one? Mine?
Oh, mind your
What?
own business.
Mind your own business. Mind your own business. And what did that mean? It means, hey, just leave it alone. Stay away from it. Two guys in a fight, just keep driving and get on out of there. Stay away. Shouldn't we call the police? Nope. Just let them kill each other. One less mouth to feed.
Oh my lord.
Oh no. Oh, and so by the way, see, my culture gave me, because of the more you learn about what my culture gave me, now this won't shock you, I don't think. I think I can do this now, it won't shock you. I'm in a class, and there's this little squirrel that's just turned into a little squirrel with, it's just like, there he is again, just giving me grief. And I look out at him, and watch what I do, watch me. I look at him and I go, there. I just pinched his head off. Whoa! Just pinched that little puppy's head off. Pinch. Gave me a certain sense of satisfaction so I don't react and say something inappropriate in class. And he goes, "What did you do, Mr. Bonai?" I said, "You'll never know." Boop. Pinched his little head off. That's on tape. That's pretty sad. But I'm saying, your culture equips you with stuff. And some of it's good and some of it's not so good. And my wife tells me some of the stuff my culture equipped me with isn't very good. But I had to discard the ones, that thing about feelings and attitudes.
Married life will do that.
I mean, do any of you have a tool? You have not because
You ask not.
you
Or
ask
work
not?
Or work not. You work, you don't eat. We got told that a lot growing up.
Okay, see, you don't work, you don't eat. You have not because you aren't willing to go get a job. I don't feel like working. Well, where does feeling come into it?
Yeah. I didn't ask you if you wanted to.
I didn't ask you if you felt like it. I just said get to work. And you understand? Not everyone comes from the same cultural. Okay, it's obvious you don't all come from the same culture that I do, and that's what I like about Vygotsky. It says identify this culture, and you all know, don't you, that Vygotsky's Russian.
Sounds
So
like it.
when the wall was there, we didn't have all this information, and so once the wall came down and Vygotsky's information became popular outside of Russia, people in America said, "Wow, this guy has got some stuff going here. This is good stuff to be thinking about." And so then I go to Russia, and I visit the culture where his thinking was very popular. And guess what? If the culture does all of this and equips you for this, don't be surprised if you find a very monolithic culture. Because we're going to use the culture to produce a whole bunch of little soldiers, little thinkers who think just a certain way. I mean, when I was in, years ago, when I was in Ukraine, teaching one summer in a Bible Institute, I said to the guy in charge of the Bible Institute, I said, "What is that across the street over there?" It looked like just someone had, it looked like what you'd see a parking garage in America, but they had built this like 5-6 story structure out of concrete, and then the way they built houses over there, then they're going to go in and finish it all off and make it livable space. And they said, well, that's a government program that they started, but they abandoned it halfway through because they changed what they were doing. And I said, why doesn't the church ask if you can buy that, and then you could turn the bottom floor into a store, and then you could turn the second floor into some offices for the church, and even have a place for the church to meet there, and then you could turn the upper floors into apartments for elderly people. And he said, oh, we could never do that. And I said, if you took that idea to America, to the churches that help
capitalize on it,
they would go, that's a great idea. Let's help fund that over there. And he said, oh, we couldn't do that. I said, oh, you mean you couldn't ask for the money? He said, no, even if we had the money, we couldn't do it. And he was just matter of fact about it. I said, what do you mean? He said, you can't buy a building that the government has left standing as an embarrassment to the government and do something worthwhile with it. It'll make the government look bad. I said, the government is bad. Yours and mine. Governments mess up all the time. Well, you can maybe say that in America, but you don't say that in a communist country. Whoa. And I heard over and over again, it's not allowed, it's not allowed, it's not allowed, it's not allowed.
That's crazy.
It is. It's just that's the way they're taught to think. I was asking a question in class. I was supposed to teach a class on how to be an effective teacher. And someone said to me, are you going to go over there and teach them, did I tell you this, that are you going to go teach them the American way of teaching? I said, no, I'm going to teach them to study the master teacher, the Lord Jesus. And so I asked a question and they couldn't answer the question because, and my translator said, because you haven't given them the answer yet. Well, can they look at the Bible and see what Jesus did and said and tell me? Well, they could, but that could get them in trouble. I mean, in their world, that could get you in trouble. Too much initiative, too much of that. And wow, what a culture they've been living in. But see, Vygotsky helped me understand some of that that's the culture they're coming from. So when someone says, I can't do that, what they really told you was their culture didn't equip them with those tools. And so then you say, well, is there something I can do to help them learn that? And so I think there's a lot of attitude stuff that we carry with us from our culture that has equipped us or not equipped us to handle things in the future. On page 34, Vygotsky talks about scaffolding. So have you ever seen any scaffolding?
We talked about it in my last ed class, actually.
Okay, so see, I have some scaffolding at home. It's metal stuff that you put together, and what do? You stand on it to work up high. So why is what page 34, providing support and helping them with a skill until they can do it without help, why is that called scaffolding? Because what am I doing? In the class where you talked about that, what are you doing when you're scaffolding?
You're lifting them up to the level that you're wanting them to be
I'm
able to
picking them
succeed.
up to help them get there. I'm showing them how to do it. I'm walking them through the process.
I mean, it's a very architectural term in its very definition. I mean, when they began to build buildings that were over 2 feet tall, or 2 stories tall, 2 feet, short buildings, 2 stories tall, they would have the scaffolding upside while they were building it. But before they learned how to do like the cross supports and whatnot, they would take the scaffolding away after they were finished, and it would cave in. And so, I mean, if you think, I think of it very in an analogy as far as like learning in architectural terms, because you're there holding them up until they've been able to build that foundation where they can do it on their own.
So let's take a student who's learning penmanship, and you tell them they're supposed to make a certain letter, and they say, I can't do it. What would Vygotsky suggest that you do? Take their hand
And write with hand over hand.
and do it for them and say, do you feel that? Do you see what's going on? And then say, now you do it and move my hand. And you're still kind of moving your hand a little bit, helping them. And then after a while, you take your hand away. And then what do they say?
I did it.
I did it. I got it. I mean, have you had little kids say that to you anywhere in life? Is there anything more rewarding? I don't care what happens. To hear a student say that after you've helped them acquire a skill, that's what Vygotsky brought us, that scaffolding idea. And I thought, what a cool thing. Also, cooperative learning. I think maybe sometimes we've maybe messed up cooperative learning, when really from Vygotsky's standpoint, it's just working together. Can 2 people, let's see, we're going to move some lumber, some 10-foot 2x4s from one place to another. Will it be easier if there's 2 of us doing it, if the 2 of us pick up like 6 of them and carry them? Or will it be better for each of us to just make our own trip and keep tearing them till we get all the 2x4s moved? Okay, let's talk about your cultural tools. Which would you rather do? Work by yourself and keep moving 2x4s, or be paired up with somebody where you stack them up and move a larger stack than you could carry on your own?
I would prefer working by myself.
See, that's part of your cultural thing. I would prefer to work by myself. But who else would prefer to work by yourself?
With carrying stuff, I don't like carrying stuff to people.
But, okay, so see, it's just like, but if I'm going to teach kids this skill that's going to serve them well someday, I need to teach them how to work together. Some things, you need to have 2 people working on it. You go, like what? Okay, it's time to fold up these tables and put them against the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So which is easier? For each of you to take a table? If each of you had to turn a table over and put it up against the wall, what would some of you do? Say, you know what, I'll get someone to help me with my table, and then I help them with their table. We turn it over. Say, nope, I'll just kick this thing over and fold it under and do it myself.
That's what I do.
Mm-hmm. And see and understand that if that's our cultural thing, I'm gonna have to make myself deliberately say, let these kids do some together stuff, because there are occasions. In fact, what will happen, those of us who really rather do it ourselves, I'm trying to put up a beam across
And then you get frustrated.
a driveway. I carry up one end, then I go carry up the other end, and the other end falls down, and I'm going back, and my son-in-law pulls up in the driveway and says, what are you doing? And I said, I'm trying to put this beam up for this garage door with a 2-car garage. And he goes, well, you get on one end and I'll get on the other. And just like that, we had it in place. And I thought, why do I want to do everything by myself? So think of some time when it would have been good to work together. And then, instead of just having kids work together for the fun of it, kind of create some learning activities where working together helps them. Where would that be? Let's see. Memorizing your multiplication facts, using flashcards, pair them up. And then when you're pairing kids up, I think the book talks about this, it's very good. Don't just always pair the same 2 up.
Yeah.
Mix them around. But pair them up. So, okay, here's the card. So let the kids do the flashcards with each other. And some other skills too. Think of ways to teach cooperation. And teach them how to help one another. Okay. Page 36. Who's this Bronfenbrenner guy? Bronfenbrenner.
It's quite the name.
Social and institutional circles. Ah, there's a picture of it on page 37. So there you go. Social and institutional circles in a child's development. And what's the first one in the middle there? It's just a child. Okay, what's the first circle the child's a part of?
Microsystem.
Now they say
Microsystem. That's what it says.
microsystem. And what's in the microsystem?
Just a child.
I've never seen a child all by himself. I mean, learning anything all by himself. I mean, some do, but what should probably be in there with the child?
A teacher.
A teacher, a parent.
Which they
Right.
have that in the next. They have that in the next system. Because I mean, some students I think can be self-directed without having that push for
That's true.
initiation, and so they can learn things on their own.
But if we're talking about the general population, kids left to themselves bring their mothers to shame.
I was like, "There's a proverb. What is it?"
Yeah, that's a proverb out there. No, they need somebody. In fact, what I see wrong with this picture is they've got family out here with school and all this other stuff.
Should be in the circle.
And I'm thinking family ought to be right there in that circle.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because, I mean, think about your own experience. I mean, didn't it just, I mean, you don't think of yourself apart from your family. Do you?
Mm-mm.
Now, Think about the little kid who doesn't have that family. Wow. I mean, did all of you grow up with both a mother and a father? Think about the little kid who didn't have both. And start to look at the circle. So what happens is, I say, look at the family. Okay, did they have two parents? Well, if they only have one parent, you'll just have to be both the mother and the father. That is not going to happen. If you're a single parent and you're a single father, you better find a woman somewhere to help you with
Find
those
you a
kids. And if you're a single mother, you better find a man somewhere to help with those kids. Children just need both of those inputs into their lives. So I think check out and if something's missing in the family, then you say there's going to have to be some work done in terms of helping them become all that God wants them to be. Now, after family, what comes next? You say, which one of those things outside in that green circle comes next after family?
The care center, the daycare.
The daycare center?
Facility, probably.
School.
Well, family, I guess that was. There's church.
Church?
But I mean, if the daycare center's gonna have your kid more hours a week than the church is.
Where's the neighbors?
What's that neighborhood?
Neighborhood play area. Up at the
Did
top
any
right.
of you
Oh,
have,
it's not.
outside of your own family, that your next contact was your neighbors?
My neighbor was my grandparents.
So maybe we should each take the idea of this circle and draw our own circle. And it might not even hurt to have all the kids in your classroom draw a little circle that shows all the influences in their life, what kind of things they have going on. And then all of a sudden you find out that some of the kids, when they draw a circle, if they draw the circle and they don't have a house in their circle because where do they live?
Both houses.
Where?
2 houses. Mom live with mom and then sometimes with dad.
Sometimes they don't even have a house to live in with either one of them. They live in a car. No way. Not in this day and age. Are there children that are going to walk into your classroom who do not have a home to go to when they go out of school at the end of the day?
Quite possible.
Very likely. Very likely. It shouldn't be. But I'm just telling you, it's the world out there that these little kids are living in. And you start saying, wow, what do we do to make up for some of that? When my granddaughter told me that she had a little kid who lived out of a car, I go, oh, wow. Is it a boy or a girl? And what size clothes do they wear? And when I go shopping, what do you think I do? I pick up clothes and give them to my granddaughter when she comes over and says, can your little cherubs use this? And she goes, yes, Poppy. I said, well, take it to them. Give it to them. And then one time she said, Poppy, some of these little kids I have don't even have underwear. And I'm going, so I'll go to Walmart and buy some. And just gave them to her, and it's like, whoa, she goes, this is so cool, Poppy. I'm going, well, my heart goes out to those little kids. And I'm glad they put in a circle places of worship.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys were asking the last time about, what do you say in a public school setting? I was teaching in a public school one semester in the inner city, and this girl transferred in, and her first few days of school, she was very well behaved. And then she started hanging out with the wrong crowd. And I said to her one day after class, I said, would the people at your church approve of the people you're hanging out with now? And she goes, how'd you know I go to church? I said, because of the way you were dressed when you came to school. She goes, what? I said, I can tell that you probably go to church somewhere on Sunday. She said, yes, I do. We go to church every Sunday.
Mm.
And it affected the way she dressed when she was coming to school. I said, well, just ask yourself, would the people at your church approve of you hanging out with these kind of people?
Mm.
And I'm just trying to help them do some thinking about it. Your neighborhood, what kind of neighborhood did you grow up in? Did all of you grow up in a safe neighborhood?
I grew up in the country, so.
You grew up in the country?
And my grandparents were my neighbors.
And
my
your
cousins
grandparents were your neighbors?
Parents on the other.
Okay.
Cousins will be the same.
The rest of you, did all of you grow up in a safe neighborhood?
Sure.
Yeah.
Can you imagine growing up in a neighborhood where it was dangerous to go outside after dark? I just think, what's going on with some of these kids today and the kind of world they're coming from, and somehow we're supposed to help them make the transition to become productive adults. They're going to need a lot more than just the 3 R's, aren't they? They're going to need us showing them a lot of compassion and concern. Okay. Well, they say schools and the government. I say, what about stores? What about parks? What about libraries? Did all of you go to libraries when you were little kids? Did you have a park close by to go to? So what happens if I have a whole bunch of kids who haven't had that experience?
Take them there.
Take them to the park. Take them on a trip. This little class that my granddaughter teaches in the inner city for these little kids that come from poor backgrounds, they have a lady in their school, or a lady who just loves their school and is a benefactor to it, and she buys these passes to Science City.
Mm.
Did some of you go down there with her? Was that cool
That was
to be one-on-one with a little kid
That was so
at Science City who lives who knows where and comes from what kind of an environment, and you get to be there with them and one-on-one stuff? When I heard she did that, had you paired up with you guys, what a cool thing to do for those little cherubs. Those little kids are just, it's like, and I think it's so neat because she realizes she's been so blessed. What can I do to help these little kids who are so much less fortunate in life than I ever had? And it's amazing what she can do with them. Okay, we'll stop there and I'll make a mark and we'll pick up with language and literacy on Wednesday. And then on Wednesday we're going to do chapter 3 as well. So be sure to try to read chapter 3 before you get here.